folks. My name is Girish, Bali, the host for Back2Basics, another Back2Basics for another week. Today is a tough topic, but today is a topic that we need to talk about way often, and we don't talk about it enough. So today we're going to be talking about trauma. We're going to talk about PTSD and all that fun stuff. But the thing is that it is really hard when someone actually goes through that journey. Now, if I have not gone through that journey and the other person has, how do you go and comfort that person? It's very hard, isn't it? So why don't we ask these questions to the guest of mine, and her name is Evangela, and she's an amazing person to chat with. I chatted her like 2 minutes right before the recording, and an absolute amazing person. And she also has a podcast, so we'll talk about that detail too. And how did she get into this fun, or I should say troubling topic of today. So Evangela, how are you? And thanks for coming to Back to Basics.
I'm doing well, Girish, and thank you for having me on the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you again for that. And hopefully I didn't really screw up on the name, because we mentioned this several times before the show.
Not at all. You got it right.
Thank you. Awesome. So that's A+ for me. So thank you. So before we get started with the topic for today, and a tough topic, mind you, what does Back to Basic mean to you?
It really reminds me of, so I am in recovery from addiction due to the trauma that I've experienced in my life. And one of the principles that we practice is we have a program called Back to Basics, where you get back to the roots of understanding, just the simple things in life that help you live the life that you want to live. So immediately when I saw the name of the show, and, it reminded me of, just getting back to your roots and clearing out all the clutter, all of the attempts to try to be something that you're not, and just getting back to the basics so that you can, live the life that you want to live.
Yeah. So thank you again for that, and hopefully I didn't bring all the bad memories with the Back to Basic program,
Yeah.
but it is the theme of the show. So thank you again for that. And when I read the bio, you did mention that, and I said, you know what, I need to rope you into this show. So thank you again for
You're welcome.
accepting, and I'm very honored for that.
You're welcome.
So, is it really hard to go and talk about trauma in general?
Due to my own work with my therapist and, sharing my story multiple times, I've gotten some distance between um, what has happened to me and who I am today. It's never easy to sit and talk about the things that I've experienced, but it doesn't shake me the way that it did when I first got into recovery and got into therapy and started dealing with some of this stuff. So it's a lot easier today than it was 4 or 5 years ago.
So, is it because, thank you again, by the way, is it because the times have changed that people, they don't talk much and now we're very vocal? Is it due to COVID, or is it just the culture has changed?
I'm thinking that, in all actuality, social media has, and the ways of the internet and things like that. I don't think it's necessarily that things have gotten any worse or even changed. I just think that our access to that information has become more readily accessible. You can go and you can Google podcasts like yours or mine, and you can find out information. You can get statistics from Google. You have people who are willing to share their stories, on their Facebook pages, on their Instagrams. We've even got TikTok, and people are being very vocal about their traumas because they're realizing there's more people who have experienced trauma than there are not, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of traumas. I don't know the numbers, but I know for a fact that there is a huge number of rapes and
Hmm.
reported.
Hmm.
Okay, but there's unreported, which is a lot.
Yes.
But it seems like we're talking about it more nowadays due
Yes.
to social media. I mean, that's just one example.
Hmm.
So, if you don't mind, can we talk about your story of what you have gone through, and we'll go through that?
Yeah, that's fine. So I grew up in an environment where there was sexual abuse, there was physical abuse, and there was a lot of alcoholism and drugs and things of that nature. I am the second born of four siblings, and we experienced abuse at the hand of my father.
Hmm.
Um, I don't have contact with my father now.
Hmm.
It's something that I choose for my own peace. I have not. I hold no ill will toward him. As a matter of fact, I love him, which is something that frustrates me. But my earliest years, and on up until I was about 13 years old, I had this experience with my father, and it wasn't a good one. Like I said, he sexually abused us, and he physically abused my mother and my sisters, but he didn't physically abuse me. We did grow up in neglect and things of that nature. And, in hindsight and doing work on myself, I do realize that my mother did the best that she could to try to make sure that we were safe and things
Hmm.
like that. But she was also being abused and things of that nature. And the nature of trauma is when you're being traumatized, even if
Hmm.
you're an adult, you can't provide much protection for anyone else.
Right.
You put yourself um, in further jeopardy by stepping in. But like I said, first 13 years of my life were riddled with, abuse and things like that. And as a result of that, I developed complex PTSD.
Hmm.
And I also, later on in life, much later on in life, by the time I was 37, my trauma came to call and I developed addiction to alcohol.
Hmm.
Um,
So,
Go ahead.
if you don't mind me asking, I know that you mentioned when you emailed me the difference between PTSD and C PTSD. I
Mhm.
want the viewers to understand the differences, if you don't mind.
Yes.
So, what are the differences between the two?
Okay, so with classic PTSD, what most people bring to mind is, the combat veterans, those who have been to war. It's
Hmm.
usually characterized by a single traumatic event that may happen, and you get the effects of it, such as intrusive thoughts, um, mood swings that include, you may go into violent rages.
Hmm.
You seek to avoid being re-traumatized again, like you avoid situations and circumstances that remind you
Okay.
of that. So when you think of PTSD, you think of, like I said, combat veterans or someone who may have had a single huge event, car wreck or something like that, and they end up having some symptoms such as intrusive thoughts and things of that nature as a result of it. And it can resolve, over time with
Hmm.
having a support system that helps you restore a sense of safety.
Sure.
Whereas one of the key factors for complex PTSD is that you have multiple traumas that occur over an extended period of time, such as childhood trauma,
Hmm.
or it can be. I lost my train of thought for just a moment.
No, that's okay. So
Sure.
let me ask you this then.
Hmm.
So, if a person loses someone,
Hmm.
okay, and then they lost another one, and then they
Hmm.
lost another one within the same family,
Hmm.
is that considered complex?
That could be considered multiple events of trauma. Now, the development, everyone who experiences trauma doesn't get PTSD
Hmm.
or complex PTSD. What makes the difference is being able to restore safety in the
Hmm.
person's life.
Hmm.
So you may have someone who, they experience many deaths, because I do consider grief to be a trauma. It's a traumatic event.
Yes.
Um, you can have someone who experiences grief. If they are able to, process the grief and move through it the way that they need to, even losing somebody in a very traumatic way, say, abruptly, they were killed in a car wreck or something like that.
Hmm.
And if they have a support system and the ability to restore safety, they most likely will not develop PTSD.
Yeah. 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 Thank
You,
you again for explaining that and the
Mhm.
details of that. And I think I interrupted you. Go ahead, please.
They what the big key difference is for people, because like I said, everybody who experiences traumatic events does not develop PTSD or complex PTSD. It's
Hmm.
just that measure of safety. And that's why it's so important for, like, when our combat veterans, when they come back from war and things of that nature, it's very important to give them a support system to restore normalcy in their life and to help them get back to a space of safety, because they spent upwards of years, in combat situations. They're on high alert. Their systems are wired
Hmm.
to respond and react. And
Hmm.
so when they come home, it's very important for us to give them resources to restore normalcy. And if you have a person who suffered through childhood trauma, such as myself, it's very difficult to try to build those safe relationships as you move throughout your life, because you don't suffer just one event. And I don't, in no way do I mean that any one trauma is worse than another.
Sure.
Um, but on the same token, when you suffer multiple traumas throughout your developmental years, it changes the
Mm,
way your brain chemistry is set up,
of
and
course.
it takes some sincere effort to restore safety and to make sure that you can step out of that and start to experience post traumatic growth, as opposed to being controlled by the symptoms of your PTSD.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you again.
You're
The
welcome.
story that you mentioned about age 13 and when you were very young,
Hmm.
did you think that you were a victim, or do you came out of that? What are your thoughts on
Um,
that?
so I knew that there was a whole lot that just wasn't right
Mm,
with the way that I was brought up and things of that nature.
mm,
I consider myself to be, I don't know that I necessarily want to use the word lucky,
mm,
but I've had a lot of experiences in my life where, I've experienced people who I've been able to rely upon and develop a sense of safety. And I've had those types of people sprinkled throughout my life. I've also had situations that have rocked me to my core and made my PTSD flare up
mm.
pretty badly. Like I said, age 37, I hit a brick wall with addiction. And while I have always had night terrors um, for the majority of my life, it gets worse when I get stressed.
Of course.
And when I hit that brick wall when I turned 37, all of my symptoms, it seemed like things got worse.
Mm,
And, so I hadn't had therapy until I was, 37 years older, somewhere around there. I got into therapy and started to work on all these issues that I had, and it seemed like it was getting worse. And it took me a while to realize that it wasn't getting worse, but that I had never really fully dealt with
yeah,
what
yeah.
I had been through, and bringing those memories up was causing some disturbances
Sure,
with
sure.
me.
The
But
reason why I ask is everywhere on the search engines, like when you Google
mhm,
PTSD, we've been told that is considered weak and it considered broken.
yeah,
So is that a true statement? Because I think
no,
what you said is that you're looking for support, and when you look for support, a good support, I think that breaking can be mended, right? So
yes.
what are your thoughts on that?
So I want, I work with clients and things and people who have experienced traumatic events, and I have a mantra that I tell them,
Hmm,
that what we do in healing and working and doing the things that we do is not for the weak. It takes tremendous courage
sure.
to look at your trauma and face it. A person who has survived a traumatic experience and who has developed PTSD, first of all, you can know that they've gone through some very difficult things and they've survived.
Hmm,
They've survived.
hmm,
And they're living their life. They're showing up daily. They may have some struggles, but how many people do you know? Again, taking it back to the combat veteran situation. I
hmm,
know here in America we have a lot of people who think that they can go to war and
hmm,
kill
hmm,
and do things that may be against their conscience and
hmm,
things like that, and come back and just be okay. But the majority of us cannot.
hmm.
Those who have been through years and years of child abuse, neglect, abandonment, and still are able to stand and face those things on a daily basis, would you categorize them as weak?
Yeah.
They're
Because
not weak. They're very resilient.
when you're going into the war, you're starting age 18, right? I mean,
Mhm.
technically that's what the legal age is. Do you
Yes.
think that the I mean, we're not blaming anybody, but this is just an observation that these government militaries, they're not training people
No.
to think properly, and they're
No.
just doing to do.
Right. And I'm a army veteran.
Hmm.
So,
Thank you for your services, by the way.
you're
So,
welcome. I know that at the age of 18, I was not prepared to go into that type of environment and survive.
Hmm. Yeah, because
I I
you
could
can.
not. I ended up not being able to go because of my complex trauma from childhood.
Hmm.
I ended up not being able to go, but I know that I was not ready, and they do not prepare. Um, they don't prepare people, children,
Hmm.
in my opinion, to be able to go in and
Yeah, I
just
mean,
handle
even
things.
though 18 is an adult age, but when it comes to that type of situation, I don't think they're
No,
adults, right? I mean,
they're not.
they're still fragile if you think
I
about it.
was not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
can
I
say
mean,
that I was not.
if you take that example, then yeah, right.
Yeah,
So I mean, yeah, definitely for sure. So thank you again for that.
yeah.
Is PTSD considered a person being violent?
That can be one of the manifestations of it.
Hmm.
It's not always.
Hmm.
For me, with my complex, anger was not something that I could access.
Hmm.
You do have people who anger, they have easy access to anger. And you may find that that males exhibit anger more because that's a more comfortable well, let me not say more comfortable emotion. That is a more accepted, socially accepted response for males, for them to be angry instead of them being, sad or withdrawn.
Yeah, I mean,
They tend to
I,
be external and outward in their displays of, the frustrations and the emotions that they have built up inside of them, because men honestly are expected to go over there, kill everybody, come back and be okay.
yeah, yeah,
That's manly. They're not given that room to say, hey, I'm really messed up because I had to do some things that I truly did not agree with,
yeah,
and I don't know how to deal with it.
yeah. Just give me 1 second. Let me go and talk to my audience 1 second because my thought just came in. Okay.
I got you.
So guys, there's one thing that I just realized what she mentioned is that it's okay to girls to or ladies in general okay to express their feelings. Is it okay for them to cry? Sure, because they're ladies, right? Because that's what they do. But then you're telling me that men are not supposed to do that? Men are able to cry because that's what humans do, because we do have emotions, but we don't show it. And when we do show it, then people they think that you're not manly enough. Now, the way I look at it is that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to cry. It's okay to vent out. It's okay. Believe me, it's okay. Because you know what? If you don't, you know what's going to happen, right? We just asked this question to my guest here. You'll become violent. You will not be broken. You'll be really broken. That's the difference, right? You want to be fixed? Let's talk about it. So that's what it is. So thank you again for that. So, PTSD is not easy for sure, right? But it is definitely treatable. What are
Mhm.
your thoughts on that?
Um, I think that, first of all, therapy, if you can afford it. I know not everyone has access to therapy. Support groups, peer
Hmm.
support groups, are excellent for survivors of all types of trauma.
Hmm.
Because you have people who understand, people who haven't been through, a combat situation, or haven't been through childhood trauma, or haven't been through a car wreck, or haven't been through these things that bring about these traumatic experiences. They don't always understand,
That's right.
and having those around you who, when you describe how you woke up in the middle of the night screaming for no reason, and
Sure.
your roommate is like, what the crap? Or your
Right.
family is looking at you like, is he crazy? Or, people who
Right.
understand the feelings of rage because you feel so out of control. Having those people around you to embrace you does wonders to help heal from those traumatic events. I've done a lot of study and research to understand, firstly, my own trauma,
Hmm.
and and to try to be a safe container for those who've experienced traumas that I haven't experienced. And one of the things that stands true is that having a peer support group,
Hmm.
like I said, because everybody, therapy is just not accessible to everybody.
Of course not. Right.
It's available, but it's not accessible. They may not have, the resources or the funds to be able to go and sit on the therapist's couch once a week or twice a week or whatever. But if you could find you a good peer support group where you can go in and you can be yourself, You can talk about the rage. You can talk about the anger. You can talk about the sadness, the fear, the loneliness, the isolation. It does wonders to help people to be able to heal.
Mm.
Podcasts, listen to podcasts, Google search, find people, find your people, those people who have been through what you've been through and
Mm.
are talking about it. And it will help you be able to recover. It
Yeah,
really
yeah,
will.
yeah. So thank you again for that.
Mhm.
Let's talk about your podcast, if you don't mind.
Okay.
The Complex Life.
Yes.
So first of all, where did that name come from? I think I have an idea, but I wanted to ask you.
Yes. So it comes from my everyday dealings with complex trauma.
Sure, sure.
And in a dual sense, life is complex. Everybody, so, I have a coaching practice called Beyond the Guru Coaching.
Mm.
And everybody, out here in this world today, everybody has a solution to your problem.
Mm.
Life is so complex. And I believe that it takes a lot of things to get us to a place where we feel that we are settled, that we're walking in our healing, and we're doing what's necessary for us to be our most authentic expression of ourselves. And so the podcast is all about me talking about my journey and the things that have worked and have not worked for me along my journey to healing and just living life on life's terms. Because the reality of the matter is, life is going to keep coming at you.
Mm.
It's just the nature of life.
You know
And
the
learning that life is not personal, it's not in the sense of life is not out to get you. You've had a lot going on. You may have, I mean, and I've had struggles. I've had some really serious struggles, some jaw dropping struggles, but I
Mm.
had to learn that life was not sitting there plotting against me.
Mm.
You know,
It's kind of funny. When I was reading your bio, and then I read the name of the podcast, and then I read the whole bunch of titles in there and episodes in there.
Mhm.
It's kind of weird that you're talking about complex stuff in a basic way, like the
Yes,
way I'm doing.
yes,
So somewhere along the line, I'm pretty sure we're kind of intertwined somewhere
yes, I agree.
when it comes to complex and basic way. So thank you again for doing what you're doing, because it's not an easy job for sure.
It's not.
The name of the podcast should have been the Life Complex. So then it'll be the TLC podcast show.
Yeah. Because
So
it's definitely it's a complex experience for each, and it's as different as the many people that we have living now.
hmm,
So it's truly complex, and I try to break it down into terms that the everyday average person can understand, because we have enough mental health jargon swirling around
yeah.
that everyday common folk don't understand a lot. So I want to help people in everyday common language.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Thank you again for that. And thank you for being here. First of all,
Thank
it's
you for having
definitely
me.
my honor. But before you leave today,
Mhm.
um, how was your journey on Back to Basics? And do you have any last words for all my listeners and my viewers?
This has been a good experience for me. I think Back to Basics is a great name for the podcast. And I would just encourage people to keep it simple. When you're struggling and you can't figure out a way to go, get back to the basics.
Hmm. Yeah. So thank you, thank you again. As simple as that. So thank you again for being here and supporting me. And please do support me on my small podcast, even though that I've done season 2 already.
Yeah,
So thank you
I
again for
understand. Trust.
So thank you again, and God bless, and we'll keep in touch. We'll have to keep in touch because
Yes.
you and I somehow we're intertwined, and we need to help each other out. So thank you again
Yes.
for that.
You're welcome.
So guys, we spoke a great deal about complex stuff in a simple way, in a basic way. Yes, trauma is one thing that we always need to talk about. Yes, people are broken, but people needs to be fixed because we are human beings. We're supposed to be helping each other out. If there's a person who needs help, it's okay to go and ask and just do a pay forward. You don't even have to pay a cent. Just saying hello and take care of them is the big, huge help to the other person. When I lost my dad in 2009, nobody was there, but there's few people who were there. They didn't know what to do because they didn't lose their dad or their mom. What did they do? They just came here and say nothing because they were there just to support me. That's all it takes. So guys, as usual, as always, there is a quote a day from Back to Basics, and hopefully my guest will like that quote. Here's the quote. The quote is, hold yourself back or heal yourself back together. You decide that. So guys, as usual, as always, what do I always say at the end of my episode? Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, take care, God bless, and keep on commenting as many as you can on all the episodes, including this one, because it kind of helps me to understand that you people are listening. Everyone is listening, because this is the show for you guys, not for me, and the guest is definitely for you. And there are three things that this show and every episode is a hit, according to me, is the content, the guest, and definitely the host. Guys, take care, God bless. I will see you next week on Back to Basics Season 2. Take care, God bless. Next week's episode on Back to Basics.
Having a humongous to-do list and a plan for the entire year with all the things that you need to do in order to, cross them off your list. No, it's really about the simplicity of being able to be in the moment and just really enjoy the moment. Being in the moment, just to be the ability to be in every moment throughout the day.
Yeah, totally. I totally understand that. Thank you again for answering that question. There was an article that I read, I don't know how many days ago, but I'll tell you one thing. There was this one line